Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us as part of our Noon Zoom series. Today, we have our guests from MLB. We have Meg Madaleno and Mommy Day Day Hudson, who are going to be talking a little bit about navigating the workforce as a minority. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them and let them get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. So good afternoon, everyone. I guess now it's officially the afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to spend some time with you and hopefully share some insight with you as you are navigating the workforce. Maybe you're looking for new jobs or considering current positions that you're in. So we want to make sure that we're giving you some great insight about how to navigate that and things to be mindful of. So my name is Meg Badalino. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Leadership Development Initiatives.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Good afternoon. My name is Mommy Day Hudson, the Queen. Keith forgot that, so let's not forget that again. And I serve as the coordinator for multicultural development within the MLB Center. No pronouns.
So before we get started with our actual content, we did want to just review some guidelines before we get going, just to make sure that everyone has the most beneficial experience this afternoon. Obviously, we've all been, very used to this Zoom virtual world lately, but it's always helpful to kind of review these things. So if you are able to, please definitely turn on your video feature. This will definitely help us to stay engaged as much as possible and connect with you on a more personal level. You can keep your mic muted to eliminate background noise, unless of course you have a comment to make or something to add to the discussion. If you'd like to add something to the discussion, please feel free to either utilize the raise hand feature, or honestly, we're a small enough group, go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and share. We definitely want to make sure that this is engaging. It does not just need to be me and Mommy talking the whole time. We definitely want to hear from you as well. Definitely feel free to utilize the chat feature as well. If that's something you're more comfortable doing than speaking out loud, for sure, you can definitely utilize that. And then also too, we just want to be mindful of certain things. Definitely want to encourage you to be open-minded and to participate. Oops, sorry, the dog is freaking out a little bit. I apologize. We want to make sure that this is engaging as much as possible. So definitely we encourage you to participate as much as possible. Some of the topics we're talking about today are really vulnerable. So, we do ask that you are brave. We're, going to provide hopefully a comfortable setting for you. And we do encourage you to be open and to share your thoughts and insights with you. This is a no judgment zone for sure. And of course, with that said, we want to be respectful of what others are saying, respectful of other people's insights and experiences, and attentive to that as well. So just wanted to make sure to review all of those. Are there any questions or concerns regarding these expectations? Are there any expectations that you'd like us to be mindful of that aren't listed here? All right, and we'll continue on. So Mommy, would you like to share what we hope to achieve this afternoon?
There you go. I was muted. I was firing. So our learning objectives for this afternoon, we're hoping that participants will be able to define and understand emotional tax, what it means, how it plays a role, identify strategies to explore the workplace, the work field as a minority candidate, identify strategies to navigate the workplace as a minority employee, and develop skills to confidently advocate for oneself in the workplace. So what is emotional tax? I think we, especially in higher ed, and just in the workplace, we have heard emotional tax, but do we really know what it means? So description, to context, I guess, emotional tax is the combination of feeling different from peers at work because of gender, race, and other ethnicity, and the association effects on health, well-being, and ability to thrive at work. These experiences can be particularly acute for people of color who fear being stereotyped, receiving unfair treatment, or feeling like the other, being set apart from colleagues because of some aspects of their identity, such as gender, race, and mixity. While most experiences of otherness are detrimental, a lifetime of being marginalized can have unique potent effects, including on health and well-being. Um, and so, to put it in simple terms, being at a workplace and constantly having to be mindful of everything that you do, of everything that you say, for the fear of either being singled out, feeling like the other, or just being different based on your identities, whether they are on the outside or on the inside, can cause not only work issues, so your productivity level, your well-being, emotional, stable place to wanting to be there, but it can also have long-term effects. So even past you leave a place that maybe have you do so emotional taxation, you can take that unguardedness and feeling the risk of like losing your livelihood to other places around. And so this is a sketch on the side, the experience of being different due to gender, race, results on you being on guard, being not your authentic self to protect yourself. And then fear in the race of employment, which, for many of us, this is our livelihood. Like we support ourselves. And so that race is very real and it's tied to how do we do everything, not only in the workplace, but in our daily life.
Yeah, and so I think what's important to note about this is that these are when we're talking about emotional attacks, we are talking about these aspects of our identity that might set us apart from, whether it's our coworkers, our teammates, other people in our classes, and this honestly can be anything, which we'll get to in a second. But we wanted to give you an idea of what are some examples of this, right? So it's kind of like this idea, like Mommy just shared with us, this great definition, description of what emotional attacks is. And so for context purposes, what does this look like in the workforce? So certainly, for individuals that identify as a specific race, if there's specific jokes that are said by coworkers that can make them obviously feel uncomfortable, that is definitely an example of feeling that emotional tax. This quote here: before a job interview, I changed the appearance of my hair to make it look more like the hair texture style of the majority of the people at the company. So, and I think that's something with individuals that have specific privileges, that we're not aware of those things, right? So for an example, like as a white individual, my hair is within, probably I'm in my workplace and people around me have hair similar to me, right? So this is something that I wouldn't necessarily think about or have to think about, right? But I think it's really important for us to be aware that these are examples of things that individuals have to consider and think about, so that they don't feel that they need to be on guard, and they don't feel like they're being singled out, right, for specific things. Another one too, kind of the same thing as a parent. Appearance is also voice, and how we speak. So this quote here: I work from home, so none of my callers can see me. Based on the sound of my voice, they assume I'm a young Caucasian female, and so they are very comfortable making very racist comments against different nationalities. I have to pretend that I'm not offended, and I'm encouraged by my superiors to suppress my true identity. And this quote was said by an Asian female. So, these are just these little things. I think a lot of times when I think about examples of emotional attacks, to me, they kind of go hand in hand with microaggressions too. So if those of you that are familiar with microaggressions, these are these little things that, people of specific identities, they don't think twice about when they're making certain comments or they're acting in a certain way to certain team members or coworkers, but they can certainly be draining. And so I think, if any of us were in these situations, we could probably agree these would make us feel uncomfortable, right? So can you imagine you're in a workplace, you're trying to remain professional and respectful, and now you're feeling a specific negative way because of this experience, right? And so, as Mommy mentioned in the slide before, that's obviously going to have a huge impact and effect on your productivity at work, right? So that's something. So this is how we wanted to start the conversation, kind of talking about what does this look like before we actually talk about ways to address it, right? Mommy, is there anything you want to add regarding these quotes?
Yes, I actually wanted to show a video. I think I want to explain what the video is. A short clip. Actually, it's not a video. It's a short clip. Um, I think we have heard code switch, and we have talked about what code switch looks like. Code switch is emotional taxation because code switch takes place in order to fit in order to not be looked as the other and have that. That takes a constant effort to code switch, to know who you're code switching with, especially if you have, in higher ed, we have office settings, but then we also have events and things like that. And so you constantly have to make an effort in your mind before you do anything to code switch to figure out, is this a setting where I need to be this type of person, or is this a setting where I can be my authentic self? And if this switch. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. There are several code switch in there, and as I said, and if you can take from the video, from the clip, it happened instantly when she came in contact with each person. But this is not an instant reaction. I can tell you because I code switch like every day, all day. And so it becomes natural to you because it becomes part of your everyday life. But sometimes with other things that happen, as Meg explained, in the workplace, with other interactions, it becomes really exhausting not only to code switch, but to figure out where is your place and what identities do you hold when you walk in a space. Holding space, we talk a lot about holding space and being your authentic self, but when all of those spaces are not the norm, right? So this is not the generic, what everybody looks like. Max mentioned, my hair is very different. And I will quickly share, years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I decided that every time I go to an interview, I will wear my natural hair because I had an incident at a job where I started with protective hairstyle and then I had my natural hair and it was like, whoa, what is this? And I realized that now my authentic self of things that I can change or want to change was not acceptable. And so I had to become conscious of when I make decisions, even before I started a job, what does it look like for me to work in a place with all of my identities, with how I look, with all of the things that I hold that make me who I am, and making that conscious effort. I had to turn out jobs because of that. Questions that were microaggressive in that regard of like, are you going to change your look? No. And so this is a constant model that we have to not only overcome. And for when we talk about allyship, making the space for that to take place, because as I said, on the outside, it looks easy and it looks almost automatic and it looks like we want to do it. But that is not a case. It's definitely a protective mechanism and is a mechanism that will help us stay in a workplace, fit in a workplace, and continue to support for ourselves and our families.
Thank you for that, Mommy. I think something that's important to note too is that when we're talking about these and we're talking about tax exemption, it's not just it doesn't just affect maybe race or ethnicity, right? There are many aspects of our identity that are listed here in which people can feel that they have to that they experience emotional tax, right? So for instance, your age. So for instance, if you're in a workplace in which you might be one of the youngest people in your place of work, people and a lot of others are much more senior, you might feel a sense of that people don't take you seriously or
Mhm.
people don't respect your opinion. And they might make little comments about, like, oh, were you even born then? Oh, do you even understand what we're talking about? Right. So that's an example of how someone could be affected by emotional tax by their age. We've, certainly talked about physical appearance, gender. So certainly, I'm sure we are aware that women in the workplace are, have been treated differently than men in the workplace. The simple fact that it is a statistic that women are nationally paid less than men for doing the same jobs, right? So that's certainly an example. Physical ability. So this is something too, especially for people that might have invisible disabilities. This could be something that's really draining, right? So especially someone that that might be needing to deal with some of their mental health, and they don't feel comfortable, or they don't feel confident or secure, safe enough to share that information with their coworkers or those people that work with them. That's certainly going to have an impact. Oftentimes this, we can experience a combination of these, right? So it is, I think, important to think about those different aspects of our identity that might make us feel on guard. And I think Mommy made a good point too. She mentioned being our authentic self. And so I think that's it, right? So I think if you reflect and think about it, are there times in which I have felt on guard? Are there times in which I have felt uncomfortable in my place of work, in which I felt like I wasn't able to be my full self? And that's what we mean when we're kind of talking about this emotional tax and being on guard. And so this is really what we're talking about when we're talking about navigating the workplace as a minority. It's in this context, with these things in mind. Before we move on to our activity with this, Mommy, is there anything you want to add regarding
Yeah,
this?
I wanted to say something to know. We went over briefly. Emotional attacks. Emotional attacks can lead to trauma, and most times it will lead to trauma. As I mentioned earlier, you take that on guardedness, that feel of being the other, to other places, to a point where then everything that comes your way, whether it is a compliment or it is an inquiring question about whether how you look or some of your identities, now everything can feel as like this is, you're singling me out, or this is an attack. And having to work, the average person works 40, 50 years because we work too much. And so imagine going through your entire, professional adult life, 40, 50 years of constantly code switching, feeling that emotional attacks, feeling like the other, and then going to create relationships with other people outside of employment. So when you're making relationship, social relationships, it affects you there as well, because then you start to look at everyone that looks like the people in your office, as the same person. And so your circle becomes a very close off circle. So there's the ripple effects from emotional attacks continues on outside of the job, outside of the incident, if the small incidents, and continue on to that. And it can take a lot to not only say, you know what, I think I need counseling for this, or I need therapy, because then we go into the other quadrant of what the stereotypes are, or the stigma with getting help with some of those traumas that we don't even realize for the most part that is there, or what have caused it.
Yeah. So that's obviously, thank you, Mommy, for pointing that out, because obviously not only are you not being productive in your current job situation, but this could certainly have lasting effects on the rest of your life. So it is really important to be thinking about these things and addressing them. So we want to give you, actually, I'll let Mommy explain what we're going to do next. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we're gonna give you some time to do some activities, and if you see, there are 4 questions, but we want you to really dig deep into your experiences, and to share experiences and lived experiences, so that we can have a conversation of what it looks like, how it has impacted us, and how we can help each other, support each other to move. Because this is, in order for emotional attacks to evolve from the workplace and provide the space for all identities to be truly welcome and inclusive, we have to do the work. It's not only from the identifying, okay, I think this is what's happening and I can help. We all need to put our part in it to create an environment that is conducive to eliminating emotional attacks for people that don't look like the norm, or believe have beliefs that are like the norm. So these are reflection questions. As I said, I want you to dig deep, and so we can have a conversation with small groups, so we can just go ahead. So the first question is, when have you feel emotional taxation, and in what regards and what environment was this?
Feel free to share in the chat, or if you want to share out loud, please feel free to do so.
I can go first if that's okay. So this happened a couple years ago, and I was taking, this is in another school, thank God, not out of FGCU, but I was taking physics. And I think out of 20 or 25 people, it was only me and one other girl. And so what would happen was that we would break out into labs. And I remember we got this packet and we broke up into little groups. It was me and two other guys, and they were super nice. One other guy came over and he was like, "Oh, hey, what'd you guys get for like number 7, like, whatever?" And I got that answer, so I was like, "Oh, I got whatever number." And then he looked at me and he looked at the two guys that I was with. He's like, "Oh, well, let me hear what the guys got." And I was like, "I beg your pardon." And thank God the two guys that I were with were like, "Well, we're working with her and we got what she got." And I was like, "Oh, thank God." But I mean, it's kind of scary when you're in those situations, when like it was this constant feel of like, "Oh, let me not sound stupid. Let me not sound dumb, because if I'm wrong one time, then I'm going to be the dumb one in the class." And that was just really annoying. But that was my one example off the top of my head, and it sucked.
Right, you probably felt like you had to keep proving yourself, right? Like, so it was like, oh, someone didn't trust you and trust the work
Right.
you did, and so now it's a case of like you're constantly needing to outdo yourself, right? And that you're
Yeah.
constantly putting yourself in this like, let me prove myself, right? Let me prove that I'm capable to be in this physics class, right? So thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I'm happy to share one. So I've dealt with this based on my age. So my first job out of college, so this was not my job here at FGCU, it's a different university. I was definitely by far the youngest on my team and in my department, and I was really excited and eager to kind of start my career, my professional journey, my professional career, and I was working in higher ed, so I was really excited to kind of share being a young professional and having just graduated from undergrad. I was excited to kind of share my experiences because I knew it could help impact the work that we were doing. And it was extremely difficult to prove myself. I was working amongst people that have been working in fundraising and development for 20 plus years. And even though I was trying to share some insight that I felt could help us really bring support to the university that I was working at, they brushed me off. There were certain times that I wasn't invited to meetings that I should have been at. I was definitely overlooked for specific travel trips that I could have been utilized at, and it really made me feel like I wasn't competent, and it really made me almost like I felt almost gaslighted, right? And I felt like, wait, maybe I'm not good at what I'm doing. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am too young. Maybe I don't have enough experience to offer insight, right? And so it was very frustrating, and it was really hard to feel motivated. And I think something that we should be mindful of is we work in our jobs 40 plus hours a week. We're at our place of work more than we're at anywhere else, during the week. And that's draining, right? That's hard. And you want to feel motivated. You want to feel encouraged. You want to feel inspired to keep doing good work. And it's really difficult to do that if you're not feeling that you're being given those opportunities that you can.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Meg. That definitely has happened to me. I think every place that I worked before getting here, I was the youngest. Um, and so I was looked at as a student, which one is a problem already, because how are you looking at the students? They're also adults. But then it was a matter of being tokenized, which also takes you to a place of emotional taxation, because then I was invited to a lot of meetings and to a lot of committees, and I didn't understand what I was doing there, because for some of the committees I have no clue why was I here, but it was to for that diversity and everything. What do you think? I don't know. Why don't you have someone here that's qualified for this work? Because you have me here so that you can say that you are diverse and inclusive. And so that's one thing to also keep in mind when we are making the spaces to be aware of tokenizing someone. Because that can add up to the emotional taxation when now you feel like you have to perform and speak for and know about these things that you may or may not know or don't want to talk about. Okay, let's move on to the next question. How do you feel about how do you feel what do you feel do you need in the moments regarding support and resources? And you can share about what do you feel that you need from your peers, at your workplace, but also what do you feel from other relationships that you have at home and social relationships?
So I know Ashrath did share in the chat, and I think what he shared kind of answers this question. But he said, he hasn't felt emotional tax, but if he had, he would invest in himself by seeking personal development opportunities. So I think that's a great, that's a great coping mechanism, right? Is to try to look for other outlets and try to look at ways to keep improving yourself. So that's great. Thank you, Ashrath, for sharing that.
For me, during that situation that happened, like in that class, I was really lucky that I had backup with those other two guys and they weren't jerks about it as well. But in regards to other situations, when I'm stressed with either work or school, just as a way to cope and kind of reflect and look back, I distance myself from it. I just try to go do something, maybe go for a walk. I try talk it out with my parents. I talk it out with my boyfriend, and he's been great, of being like a really nice sturdy rock for me with that, and just like I am for him. But yeah, I just always try to reflect, relax, and just be like, this sucks, but I'm better than this.
Yeah, sometimes you got to find those outlets, right? Like sometimes you do got to walk away, go take a walk, right? Or like go to a support system and be able to vent about it. So that's great. Those are really, really great ways to find that support. And I think, Natalie, I'm really glad that you did share about your other group mates, your male identifying group mates that really had your back. And I think that's a great example of in those moments of people with privilege, what people with privilege in that specific instance can do, right? To support their teammate, their coworker, is to recognize like, hey, wait a minute, right? And so that's something too. Hopefully this is beneficial for all of us in thinking about being mindful of where we might see these moments happen and how maybe it's not impacting us or affecting us, but how can we support people that it's happening to?
100%.
Yes. Thank you, Megan. You said something that I always find really interesting. Uh, we have to be able to be allies to others because it may not be impacting us. But the reality is that everything impacts us. Because if you're my colleague and I am emotionally taxed and I am not being productive because I'm just so tired of being here, that's going to affect what we're doing. That's going to affect the service that we're doing. So it may not at the moment impact it, but in the long run, it will impact. It will impact the productivity of the team, and it will impact the work experience for everyone, because if that person that is feeling the other, that is feeling singled out, is not coming in with good spirits, not coming in with just wanting to be there, willingness to work there and be part of the team, it's going to affect how you come together, professional development. And I'm looking for a word that I can't find, and we're just gonna go over it. But is a word that describes how people feel in the workplace. That is so vague. Never mind. I'll find it eventually.
You let us know.
Yeah, no, I'll find it and then I'll use it a lot because that's what I do.
Right.
And so everything does impact us. So when we are being an ally and noticing something, and being an ally is not always about being front and center and speaking out. There are other things that you can do to support that person. So writing a note, checking in on them. Are you okay? If you don't feel comfortable speaking on things at the moment, having that private moment, letting that person know that we are here. I'm here for you. And sometimes understanding that that person may not know what they need. So you don't always know what you need, and that it's okay to not know what you need. Maybe you just, can we just have a work meeting? Because I just need another human there to feel connected. And so it's okay to have all of these emotions that they're going from both parties. As you are approaching someone that's feeling this way as an ally, you may not know what to do either. And that's okay. Communicating to say, look, I don't know what to do in this situation, but I am here for you. Can we figure out what you need or how we can make this better? Um, and just work through that. You don't always have to have the answer. So keeping that in mind is very important so that we don't feel then like from both ends, like it's my responsibility to figure out how to get out of this, or it's my responsibility to help someone else get out of this. Let's all work together and communicate that maybe this space, something is wrong. We can identify that and then figure out how we make it better.
That's a great point, Mommy. Thank you. And I think that that goes a long way when someone, an ally, is at least just acknowledging it, right? Like, I think that's like, oh my gosh, like leaps and bounds. Hopefully that would help the individual say, like, okay, I've got a support system in this.
Mhm. Yeah.
So now that we've kind of identified, what this emotional tax looks like, where we might experience it, and we have, started to have these conversations of like how we deal with it. Obviously, the whole point of today is to give you those tips and tricks on how you can navigate this. So we wanted to share some information regarding during the actual job search. I know many of you are undergrad students, maybe looking for those first jobs. And we want to make sure that you're putting yourself in environments that are going to be healthy and productive and supportive to you. Or maybe you might find yourself already in those situations where you're needing a little bit of support and guidance. So we wanted to start off by sharing some helpful information about finding a job and things to be mindful of. Definitely do your research. And this, I mean, you should be doing research on on new jobs anyways, but specifically in the context of what we're talking about today. What is the company's mission and values and objectives? Are they in line with maybe your personal values? Do they mention anything about diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's a huge thing, right? Like, if companies aren't like forthright saying things about DEI, then you might want to be a little bit careful and cautious about that. What are the current diversity initiatives? Are there specific resources in place for team members that identify a specific way, right? So just kind of looking into, what is this company about? What do they stand for? What resources and support do they have available, right? So that's important before you even interview, to get a good sense of what this company is about. Maybe once you're there for an informational interview, or once you're in the door for an actual interview, hopefully you'll get a chance to kind of look at, what does the representation look like? And this is obviously information that you can find online as well, if they have information about their current staff. But is it diverse? Is it inclusive? Are there individuals that maybe look like you, right? And if not, again, I think reading those bios, learning a little bit more about the executive leadership team, maybe they might not look like you, but they might have specific things that they support, right? Or they might have some specific initiatives that they work on to help support specific communities. Definitely, if you have an opportunity, talk with current employees, find out about their experience. There's no better opportunity to really learn about a place than to hear from those people that are currently in it, right? And it's okay to ask those questions, right? Like, you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you're going to feel uncomfortable, or you're not going to feel that you can do your best work. So definitely, I encourage you to put yourself out there on a limb, and it's okay to ask those questions. I've been in interviews with people that have been candidates, and they will ask, and they'll say, what resources are available for the Black community here? What is the Black population like in this area? Or whatever, pick something else. But that's quite okay. And those are the questions you can ask, and that's all right. Definitely, again, kind of going in line with that, if you can spend some time in the community or the location, where the job is. I know when I was getting my job here, I was coming from Boston. I didn't know much about the community or what it was like. So I made sure that when I came down for my interview that I had a couple extra days to do a little bit of exploring, right? And to just kind of get a lay of the land, so to speak. You're not going to get all the information you need. That's why it's really helpful and important to talk with current employees and current community members, but at least you can kind of get a little bit of a gut feeling about it. And then, once you're at that stage, when you're maybe you've gotten a job offer and you're ready to accept that offer, definitely look out for yourself and, think about what are things that are deal breakers for you, what are things that you're willing to compromise on, and what are things that you're not willing to compromise on, and advocate for yourself. I think and we'll talk about that in a little bit too, but that's, really, really important. It's, now you've taken the time to get the information on the company. You've talked with current employers. You've learned a little bit about the executive leadership staff and maybe some initiatives that they're working on. Got a lay of the land. Okay, feeling good. But now think about you and what is really important to you, and be transparent about that.
Yeah, that's very important. And when you do research for a company, sometimes go beyond the website, because we all try to be inclusive, and sometimes it's just a check mark. So go beyond the website, go to the social media, see if there are any articles. What are some initiatives that they are taking? What does that look like? So go beyond what you are able to see. If I see a brochure and I see the same, especially in higher ed, the same student, I want to see what organizations are in that institution and what that looks like. Graduation rates. What do those pictures for graduations look like? And then, even though we spend majority of our time at the workplace, we are going to go food shopping and do other things in the city. And so, as Max said, take some time if you're able to get the lay of the land. But also, you can do that virtually too. Check out the municipal website. See who are the officials of your town. What is the demographic looks in your town? Because oftentimes, one of the things that happen is that you are in a workplace and it's very inclusive, but the town may not be. And so then your social life is not there, which it affects you just the same. And so you have to figure out, what would it be for me to live and work in this place? What does that look like? And all of that information is available. I took on, like, I'm like, I want to know who am I going to come in contact with or approach when I go to the supermarket, to the movie theater. Is this town inclusive enough for me to exist and, again, be my authentic self? And so if you're able to do that, and you can ask those questions, and Max said, what do you do for in your spare time? And that will give you a little bit of an idea. Okay, what else is there for me to be and exist in this place?
I think that's a good point, Mommy. And I know we had to move on, but one little quick comment too, kind of going off of that. I think it's really important too to be mindful of what kind of industry or corporation are you looking at versus the community. So for instance, like us, we work in higher ed. I think we can all agree that the population at FGCU is very different than the population of Estero, right? So like we all know, we live in a very a community of older white individuals, right, that are on the older end of the spectrum, whereas our community, we're a lot younger than maybe the community where FGCU is, a little bit more diverse. So those are things to be mindful of too. Or maybe like if you're going into the tech industry, right, like demographically, what does that typically look like versus the community that you're living in? And I think that's something to be mindful of when you're kind of thinking about what is your price, and when you're naming your price. Are you going to be okay thinking, okay, my community doesn't represent who I am, but my place of work does, or vice versa, right? So these are things to be mindful of too. And it's a lot to consider. It's a lot to think about. And a lot of it too is trial and error, unfortunately, and trying to kind of figure out what are game changers for you, right? And what are things that you're willing to compromise and things you're not.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And so navigation and strategies once you have the job. And some of these things are things that you just have to have for like navigation. And then adapt as needed when you're going into a workplace. So advocating for yourself, what does that look like depending on your characteristics and your personality? What advocating for yourself looks like. In one of the earlier slides, we talked about finding a resource. So finding an ally, finding someone that can support you when you're trying to figure out what advocating for yourself looks like. Utilizing professional development opportunities. Uh, Again, you should ask this before you get into the job. And once they're there, then take advantage of them and make sure that you're prioritizing to use them before you have to need them, if you ever do. Network, get outside of your department. Work is not done in asylum, and sometimes your department, for different reasons, can look different than the rest of the organization. And so get out of your department, talk to other people, find a network, professionally and personal, that will help you navigate the place. And then be or find a mentor. Both can feed into your grow your personal and professional development and help you navigate the spaces as you develop your identities and characteristics. You know, we are constantly becoming, and so we're constantly working on who we are and how we present ourselves. And so having an opportunity to be a mentor someone can help you gain from experience and from different challenges that we just face to grow and just go on throughout life in a better way. Um, so you try, okay. Navigation strategy. Once you have the job,
Yeah.
Practice emotional intelligence. Focus on self-regulation. You know, you can only control what you do. It is sometimes we want to shake some people, but you can, and so you can only control what you do. And this can look different. You know, sometimes you can practice restraint, and sometimes, like Natalie mentioned, you have to remove yourself from it, and that's okay. But being of self-aware is very important to know what are your limitations. Okay, I can have this conversation and we can talk about this, or I just need to go and protect myself. And so being able to have that self-regulation is important. Find an outlet. We have talked about this. What do you do on at work? We spend a lot of time, but also off work. Take your lunch. I can't say this enough. Take your lunch. Your lunch can be a really good outlet. When you're just your daily life, just make sure that you're taking time for yourself. It is scheduled for you to take it because you're not getting paid for it. And so just take your lunch, go for a walk, just find an outlet that can help you go throughout the day. Find a community at work, outside of work, in the surrounding areas, and then practice self-care. Practice self-care. One of the things that I would talk to peers, I had a peer 2 institutions ago that she was forced all the time to take vacation because she accumulated. This is a Black woman. And she always felt like I just have to do so much, and then it was like you need to take your vacation, or you're gonna lose it. And so we have to work, and she led by example. And so I questioned her. I said, "How can you talk to me about well-being and self-care and doing anything when you don't do it? You say that you're being forced to take your vacation." And so practicing self-care is very important because you sometimes you're not going to find other people that pour into you. So you have to pour into yourself. And the way to do that is by practicing self-care.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to these. I think Mommy did a great job describing them. And these are certainly things that's kind of cool to hear. These are certain things that we talked about earlier, right? So these are things that some of you have already started to identify as ways to kind of help and advocate for yourself and take care of yourself. But I think that emotional intelligence one, that one is a really tough one. I know for me personally, I struggle with it, because I think especially in the workplace, like there is sort of like this need to be professional, right? And so, but I think what's important to remember is like, yeah, okay, but we're human, right? We have human emotions and things happen, and we're going to have these emotions and these reactions to things, right? And so it's this idea of that balance between am I being respectful, but I'm also allowed to feel the things that I'm feeling, right? And so as Mommy mentioned, I think it's recognizing, okay, where are these instances in which I want to express something, as opposed to maybe walking away and getting some fresh air, etc. So that's a tough one, and I think that's one that we are always constantly learning and growing with. So great. Oops, I think that's the last one, right? Yeah. So basically, I think for me, like when we were kind of putting this information together, what I was realizing was that it kind of all comes to this idea of resilience, right? And the importance of making sure that we are growing in our resiliency. I think a lot of this stuff, it's unfortunate that we have to share ways to navigate the workplace as a minority. Like this is stuff that we should not have to do, right? Like this, it's unfair. And it should just be a case of, in a utopia situation, we should all be able to walk into work and feel respected, feel valued, feel supported, feel safe. And unfortunately, that is not the current world we live in. And so hopefully the information that we've shared today will help you recognize ways that you can take care of yourself and support yourself, advocate for yourself in these situations, but also to be mindful and aware of those times that you can advocate for others. And so, with all that said, I think it comes down to this idea of resiliency and what that includes. And I think some of the tactics that we shared really, really support this idea of being resilient. And I think there is power in that, right? Like there's power in saying like, I rose above this. I was resilient and I got through it. So I did just want to kind of share this graph of what resiliency really is. And just I think for me that's helpful for me in this context to think about that. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Mommy.
No, that's it.
Awesome. Great. Well, that is all the information we have for you today. We did want to make sure that we shared our contact information with you. So as we mentioned, Mommy and I work in the Multicultural and Leadership Development Center, which is located in the Cohen Student Union, room 255. Please come visit us. We're a great, fun, welcoming place. We always love hanging out in the center with all of our students. Definitely follow us on Instagram. We're always posting about the different experiences, events, workshops, programs that we have coming up. And then if you've got questions for us or you want to just chat, definitely reach out to me and Mommy. We're happy to connect with you. But we just wanted to make sure to provide you with that information, and wanted to see if anyone has any questions or anything else to add to the conversation. Thank you so much for those of you that did share. This was great. This was, it's really helpful, I think, to kind of talk through some of these things. So yeah, but any questions?
The most important part about coming to things like this, making the time, is that you get this information and then you go and practice. Don't just keep this with you. We talked about a lot of strategies, and you have to find the strategies that work for you, and that feel comfortable for you, or a little bit challenged because we grow in discomfort, but that works for you. And so being attentive and participating in these things, but then don't put it in the shelf and let it get dusty. Go out there and practice it and take your lunch.
Yes.
Seeing lots of positive affirmations for your presentation in the chat. Looks like everyone enjoyed it and appreciates how important of a topic it is.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes, and thank you both for doing the presentation. I think I may have just seen a question come in the chat for you, Meg and Mommy.
Yes. Holly asks, if we join a toxic organization in hopes of changing the culture to be more inclusive, what are some steps that we can take to achieve that? Thank you, Holly. That's a great question. So one, if you happen to find yourself in an organization that is toxic or becomes toxic, is finding again your resources. Because this is not work that can be done by yourself. And so finding your resources, naming what is taking place, the situation, and then figuring out how do because we have to do it all together, strategizing to do that. I'm all about resolving things at the lowest level possible. However, if that is not possible, there's always HR. And so if you come to HR with a proposal of like, this is the situation, this is what's happening, I want to be part of the solution, I need support, then more often than that will take place. Important to know as well, though, sometimes we care a lot about a situation and or about an organization and we want to stay there, but if you don't have that support, you also have to learn how to recognize when you have to walk away. and you cannot fix the situation. And so finding your allies, finding your resources, being a team player when it comes to strategically fixing the situation, and recognizing when it's time for you to walk away.
Well, thank you all. It was so wonderful to spend the afternoon with you all. Like Mommy said, I hope that you will take this information. Don't just put it on the shelf, but really put it into practice. And obviously, if you need us, definitely reach out. We're more than happy to help with anything that we can.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Meg and Mommy, for spending your lunch with us, because we know that you need to take your lunch now.
Lunch.
I was gonna say, Mommy's still taking lunch. No, she is.
And I take my lunch. Sometimes I take my lunch at 4 in the afternoon, but I take my lunch. That's my time.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.